Today we have a pretty full agenda. For the second item on the agenda, when we discuss the cyanobacteria bloom on Pilgrim Lake, I will, after committee members have had a chance to ask their questions and comment, I will allow people to ask questions if they wish, who are here or on Zoom, as long as they keep it, brief. I also want to welcome our guest, Ed Eichner is here today on Zoom. He's the town's technical water quality consultant. He will be able to answer a lot of questions if they're beyond our ability, for sure. And I want to welcome George Meservey, the town's planner, for being here today, Meph Runyon, our select board liaison, and Alexandra Fitch from our Board of Health agent, and other people I see in the audience. So I welcome all of you today. So just briefly, as you know, going into the next item on the agenda, Pilgrim Lake, as you know, we had what I believe is its first cyanobacteria bloom beginning the first week of August, which persisted for many weeks. As we discuss this topic today, I would encourage you to consider these questions. Moving forward, until Phase 3 sewering of the upgradient homes is completed, which is still at least, I would say, 5 or 6, Judith can confirm, 5 or 6 years out, will phosphorus concentrations in the deep areas of the lake sediments and entering the lake decrease? Another question, with climate change, are air and water temperatures likely to decrease moving forward? Given the most likely answers to these questions, is there a risk of cyanobacteria blooms occurring in Pilgrim Lake in the future, with resulting potential ecological impacts and closures of the lake for recreational use? These are just questions you should consider as we talk about this. Also, as the coordinator, the technical coordinator for the Orleans Herring Count program, I am concerned that there is uncertainty regarding the impacts of a significant cyanobacteria bloom in Pilgrim Lake, the present bloom that we had, and future potential blooms on and the effects and impacts on the town's only viable herring run, and one of only 2, I believe, in the Pleasant Bay ACEC. So that question needs to be answered, if possible. And with that, I will open it up for a committee to discuss. And as I said, I will take comments from those of you who are here after we've discussed this issue. Thoughts?
I just think we ought to note that the first notice we got of that was over the weekend of August 5th, 6th, and the health department and we went to visit the lake on the 7th of August.
Right.
So, and it's still visible. So we were into 3+ weeks.
So, excuse me,
Yes, Judith.
so it was greatly improved last Tuesday, and that was seen on the sampling. It was also reported back to us by APCC, but their feeling was keep it closed for an additional week. When I went down and checked it last week, the water was clearer than I've actually seen it, and I mean, it was bizarre. It was like, how can this water be clear? The last time I had swum there, which was the weekend right before that, it was green and murky and, sort of pea soup, typical cyano looking. It was now clear. However, there persisted, and I haven't been back, but I'm guessing still persists, that little bit of, right at the edge, what is probably dead cells. So as long as you've got dead cells around, of course, you want to keep it closed. It will be sampled again tomorrow morning. OPC will be sampling tomorrow morning. I would be really surprised if it didn't reopen. So last week made 3 weeks. This will be 4 weeks if it, in fact, remains closed. And obviously, I think the entire town hopes that it opens for Labor Day weekend. I mean, that would be really,
That would be ideal.
that would be ideal. We hate to see
Yeah.
a good recreating lake stay closed for another.
Rich Levy and I went over there after last week's select board meeting. And yes, we saw some improvement at the swimming beach regarding water quality. We did see some residual
Right.
scum, brown and white scum. We went over to the herring run, to the top of the run, because that's more protected and doesn't get a lot of mixing, wind and stuff. And there was still obvious cyano color to the waters.
Okay.
You could not see to the bottom. So, I mean, in areas anyway, it was still hanging in, but.
So I think what the samplers did last time, I mean, the beach location is the location where we sample, but I believe they then went on a scum search. And they actually found the scum over by the herring run, so that's where they sampled, they took a scum sample there. The regular sampling was done at the regular location. So, We'll just have to see what happens come tomorrow.
Yes,
in terms of
absolutely.
Closure.
And also, maybe it would be helpful to many people here and also maybe watching or in the audience. I don't like to put Ed Eichner on the spot, but maybe I will do that. Sorry, Ed. But just maybe just describe in real simple terms what causes a cyanobacteria bloom and what potentially caused the bloom at Pilgrim Lake. I'm sorry. I did not tell you I was going to ask you this, but I think it would be helpful.
No worries, Judy. So basically, the situation is that typically this kind of bloom, the bloom that you got, is one where there is a slug of phosphorus that's released from the isolated lower level, the cold water level of the pond into the warmer water level. So the hypolimnion into the epilimnion. When the PALS profiles were collected, which was in the midst of this bloom, you could see that there was a loss of oxygen all the way up into that warm water, the shallower warm water layer. And what is happening there is you're getting all the phosphorus that's coming out of the sediments in that bottom colder layer, but then by moving it up into the water column, up into the well-mixed warm upper layer, you are suddenly impacting all of the sediments that generally don't see that kind of low oxygen condition, and they're releasing their phosphorus too. And all of that leads to a whole lot of phosphorus that's available to grow all of that phytoplankton. And that's how you got your bloom, at least based on the information that we have at this point. Now, certainly Pilgrim was sort of predisposed to having a bloom. There was an indication when we looked at we did the management plan back in, I think it was 2017, the data suggested that if the conditions were right, you could end up with a bloom. And now I guess that hypothesis has been proven.
Yeah, and
Thank
what
you,
Ed
Ed.
just described is what we saw at Sarah's for the last 2 years in terms of the loss going higher, and then you pick up not just that very deep basin at the bottom, but you start picking up other layers along the bottom as the dead zone climbs. So,
Yeah, and
as always, good explanation. Thank you, Ed.
also I will note that we did see conditions in Crystal Lake at the same time that were close, not exactly the same as Pilgrim, but approaching that same thermocline, the level that Ed is talking about, where it went above in Pilgrim. It wasn't too far away for Crystal either. All right, thank you, Ed and Judith. Anyone else have comments or questions?
So I do have a question. It's not really related, but I did notice when I was there that the beach, the water had receded a good foot from the beach. I assume that we've released the herring run to let the fry out?
No.
No, we
not that
haven't.
I'm aware of.
Well, that was interesting, because it was you could even see the line, and we've had rain, so why the level of the lake, I mean, I won't say that the level dropped a foot, because it's a creep back from the edge of shoreline. It's not a vertical, it's a horizontal foot, it's not a vertical foot. But that's a pretty significant drop in level.
I'm not aware that Scott Johnson has opened up the run yet.
Okay, I thought maybe anticipating a possible drop in oxygen fish kill, that he opened the run to let the little guys go.
I'm not aware that well, it wasn't open before, And so
Okay.
I know over the years, it's a well-oiled, timed machine for him to do that and let the fry out. And typically, the fry go out in the past because we haven't had enough water in October and even November. So I'm not sure what his plans are this year. Certainly, we can ask him. I will ask him. But last time I was there, which was last week with Rich, it was not open.
Okay, and in answer to your previous question, it's 5 years for the completion of the soaring of Phase 3, 2028, when it will be done.
Okay.
Started in 2026, done in '28, assuming that town meeting approves each step, as always. I mean, there's been, I should knock wood, there's been of late no pushback to additional soaring areas in this town, so there's no reason to anticipate that there would be, but town meeting is town meeting, and we never try to anticipate or figure out how our residents will respond.
Yes, Ed?
I've been visiting Pilgrim from time to time, and I haven't seen any release of the water there. I was the one who did the readings on 821 with Mike Brink. We were out in a canoe taking those readings. We did them in 2 spots with essentially
Yes, you did an
this-
extra one at our request, and I thank you.
Right. And I would just remark that as a colorblind person, it was nice to see the color green again.
A little pond humor there.
Yeah, I was swimming there the week before
Yeah.
they first spotted the bloom, and it's definitely gone green this summer, no question. Yep.
Carolyn?
Judy and I were in Town Hall on August 7th, which was a Monday morning, and heard via the Conservation Office that some member of the public had sent in a drone footage of the south end of the pond, which was distinctly green.
That was sent to George, yeah.
Yeah, so
I think it went to John
we
Jeanette.
went down and looked, and I walked down onto the beach area, and there were 12 to 15 very small children, we'd say 6 and under, taking swimming lessons in the water. There were 2 lifeguards in the chair, a young man and a young woman, and to put bits and pieces together, clearly the person who was teaching swimming lessons had waded in with the kids to bright green water. And it was swirled enough by the time I got there that it was cloudy. It was not green. So we have watched it from that point on to, Ed took pictures last Friday.
Yeah.
And I know Alex did too, so we have seen the progression, and it's obviously dying back and turning from green to brown to
Brown.
smelly to whatever. So it is dying back, but I am concerned about the fact that it doesn't appear that our lifeguards have training in identifying water conditions that might not be healthy for the people who are in the water. I said something, and the young man, I have no idea what their names are, said to me, well, the water is tested once a month. Well, I checked with Alex, it's tested once a week for bacteria, as is every swimming area.
Coli.
And every 2 weeks for cyano.
The cyanobacteria testing is done by the Orleans Pond Coalition in
Right.
conjunction with APCC. So there are a number of different groups doing this. This committee, since the year 2000, has been testing our lakes and ponds at least twice a year. We started out doing it more often than that. We now do it in April and August. So anyway, I just talked to Alex about this a little bit. We need some coordination between all of these entities to keep each other up to date on what's happening. And I have a feeling that we need to do some training with our lifeguards on visual kinds of things that they need to be aware of. It was a Monday morning, and early Monday morning, so I'm not sure what they had an opportunity to do at that point, but
I do believe this is the first cyanobacteria bloom in one of the town's swimming beaches or lakes. I do remember there was a bloom way back in the 1980s at Crystal Lake, but I don't know what happened back, then as far as time of year and whether there was a closure as a result, and the cause of that was different than we have right now. But Alexandra, please.
Hi, good morning.
Yes.
Alexandra Fitch from the Orleans Health Department, and I just figured I'd jump in.
It's okay.
Everything that Carolyn just said is pretty much why I'm here,
Yes.
lending the support of the Health Department to the work done by this board, and also what she just said, you know, this experience has highlighted some areas where we can all improve a bit on communicating with the public and with town staff. We've noticed there's a huge misconception about what the health department does, what we test for, how often we test for it. And so all these things, you know, it's an opportunity to get better at this, especially if we're going to be seeing cyanobacteria blooms in the future more often. I started working at the health department in 2017, and I can tell you that the state protocol for cyanobacteria blooms has changed completely in, you know, between 2017 and this year. I hate to disappoint the board, but Pilgrim Lake, the public health advisory will most likely remain in place through Labor Day weekend. Per state requirements, we need 2 test results collected a week apart that show significant improvements before we can lift that public health advisory.
So I'm sorry, that wouldn't be last week and this week? Because APCC said there was significant improvement last week. They just advised staying closed, I think, consistent with state protocols for an additional week.
It was my understanding that we would need, it pushed it out a week again, because from what I saw last week anyway, I went out on Monday, and I actually reached out to APCC because of what I saw on Monday. You know, it was brown, there was a horrible smell associated with it, and they went out the next day, and.
Well, OPC is the one that does the sampling. APCC analyzes the samples, but just
Well, so this
by
is
way
a
of
perfect
clarification.
example of the confusion around the testing. So either way, it's my understanding, it'll be through Labor Day weekend, but that could change.
Oh,
We will
okay.
get results on Wednesday, and the health department will communicate. On the town website, we have a little pop-up window that comes up, and it says we will issue an update on August 30th, so on Wednesday, and it'll be after we get those test results. Yes.
Valerie?
So, for clarification for me, when Skakit was closed for those couple days, there was a big sign on the beach saying no swimming.
Different.
So for Pilgrim, I mean, I've seen it in the newspaper, I've not been to Pilgrim. Is there a sign saying no swimming?
There are
So
3.
Did that lifeguard then?
We've also put up another sign that's bigger.
So has-
That went up
so
on the
I guess
9th.
the question then goes to, did the lifeguard not see the sign?
There wasn't a sign at that point because the sample had not yet been analyzed at that point.
Correct.
So, and
Unfortunately-
OPC is talking to APCC as well as the Health Department to figure out how to tighten and close this. And we've already, OPC has already started urging everyone that lives on a pond via email blast to please register for the town's alerts as well as OPC's email blasts. So, because that's a good way of grabbing people. The signs, I honestly think there could have been better placed, like right at the shoreline on a stick, rather than on the lifeguard stand and on the building. But I get it, you post where there's something to attach it to.
We did, and we did put another one. It took a few days, but we got another sign that we were able to put right down at the water.
Oh, excellent.
The way that this all rolled out, that picture that somebody referenced, that happened, you know, at least 3 days before we were able to get a test result, and I think that created some, I don't want to use the word panic, but, you know, people were talking about what was going on. They were nervous about it before we had the scientific evidence to back up the need for a public health advisory.
This is why I think education is really
Yes.
important. We need to really work on that. You know, there is a general rule out there. It's not an official rule, but it's when in doubt, stay out. If you see something that, you know, scum on the water and it's green,
Yes.
When in doubt, stay out, but people need to understand. Another thing I've discovered is I had people at farmers market talking to me about Pilgrim Lake and then saying, and there was another, Skakit Beach had one, a closure. Well, there's two different organisms, and
Yes.
people, I really think there's a need, and I think that's where maybe this committee could assist your
Absolutely.
department in providing technical information that would help you with educational materials and maybe a revised protocol or whatever.
Yes, that would be very helpful, and I think it would alleviate some of the confusion with the public. Absolutely, for next season, like looking ahead, it would be great to work together to
So-
educate.
So I would just totally agree with that, and I think where this committee can be really helpful is in education. I don't think it would be helpful to get one more step involved in the closure process. I think that's
I wasn't
something that
asking- I
OPC,
wasn't suggesting
APCC, right, and the Board of
We don't do
Health
that.
need to
Yep.
continue.
The health
But-
department has already
Yeah.
met with the rec director as well to discuss some improvements for next season and staff and the responsibility of an individual. And that's something, that I think a part of our education process. People need to think critically and evaluate a situation on their own. It takes a few
Absolutely.
days, for better or for worse, it takes a few days to get the evidence we need for an advisory or a closure. And so if you see something, stay out. Judy was,
Absolutely.
I was saying, when in doubt, don't.
When in doubt, stay out. I've
Stay
seen
out.
that on county.
Yes,
So-
and so rec staff, they're one more boundary that we can utilize to help talk to people, because they're there. They can actually see what's going on in the morning before kids show up for swim lessons. So that'll be something we're working on for next year.
And early warning, and the only thing I would add, I'm not in any way trying to say that this wasn't serious. This is very serious. However, APCC did say that it's a species that's not known to be particularly toxic or dangerous. I mean, there are many, many species. This was not one of the scary ones. And fortunately, despite all the kids, the lifeguards, people being in the water, no one, no dogs, no people became ill or suffered any consequences. So again, that's not the way we want to decide whether it was a good move. But just in this case, lest the public be out there panicking about the sky is falling, no, it's
I will
it's a
ask
good
Ed
one.
Eichner to describe in the past, what they've found as far as the phytoplankton and cyanobacteria population, but I know Valerie had a question first.
I don't know if it's a question, it's more of an observation. So when we're talking about educating the public, I would say a very simple way. It maybe wouldn't reach a lot of people, but I think it would be effective, is that when we close next year or if we close next year for some reason, that we actually, when I was at Skakit, everyone that sees that sign is saying why. So if we had an informational sheet attached, like a plastic pocket, so it's not gonna get wet, explaining what's going on there and what's going on and why at Pilgrim Lake or wherever it's closed, I think that would be a very effective way of educating the people that use those bodies of water, beyond the newspaper articles that go out and whatever you put up on the town site.
So the town side, it's not just the site, but it's the alerts that the town has. So a lot of
tourists don't get
people,
that.
no, they don't, but a lot of people locally do, and that can then spread the word very quickly.
Right, and I'm not saying don't do that.
Right.
I'm saying I think this would be an effective way to educate people
Agreed.
that are there.
Great idea, I would say. A great
So,
idea.
so I hear, words like, well, if it happens or when it happens again, and I guess that makes me think immediately on what can the town do to help minimize the chance of it happening again. And so that brings into the discussion, the management of Pilgrim Lake and the phosphorus that's in the lake. And that, of course, the Select Board, MEF, we will ask what our committee can do to support and provide information to the Select Board when I hope they revisit the decision that was made previously on an alum treatment for Pilgrim Lake. So is there something things that we can do for you? As our liaison, I ask you to do. Thank you, Alex, and you can go back up
Thank
there.
you. Thank you.
You can go back again. I'm kind of,
I'll sit down for now.
Well, I guess there's a few questions and answers that would be helpful. First of all, would be timing, because we're in the middle of constructing the warrant for the October town meeting. If funding for this isn't in that warrant, then it's not going to be in any warrant until May. And money that's approved in May can't be expended until July 1st. So, you know, that's I think, what the first question. Sort of related to that is, you know, in that article about the pond in Harwich that was part of your emails, they got funding from CPC for that. And I haven't heard any conversations in Orleans about using CPC funds to,
that was a surprise to me to see that,
Yeah.
yeah.
but I think finding out whether it is a qualified use of a CPC grant would be good to find out sooner than later, because CPC now has rolling applications, and they can take an application throughout the year.
Yeah, interesting. I guess possibly under recreation. but-
That's
Yeah.
the only possible
Yeah.
reason I could think of that CPC could justify
Yeah,
granting, you know,
I missed
granting
that.
money.
Good point.
And then, you know, there's nothing that we, or hardly anything that we get involved with anymore that doesn't come up with the observation that public education is inadequate. And what I would hate to have is all the different people all the different activities and committees that are needing to push out public education to be creating that on their own, you know, because we are trying to get away from the silos. And so for you to invent one wheel and then have another group be inventing another wheel is I think, counterproductive. So I agree with the need to be much better at public education. And I think it's a recognized need, and people are working on it, but I think whatever you want to do in public education, you should try to find a way to, you know, enter that channel of that's being developed. And,
Valerie?
Can you, is it okay? Do you mind?
no,
So can you explain a little bit more about that channel?
I don't think I have any particulars other than the continued sort of push to develop it. And I know that that Mia and the website people are, you know, they're aware of this and they're working on it. You do have the alerts, but it's not really, at this point, I think, fully developed plan.
Is there like a point person for all of this, or?
George, would you, is there a point person for that? Is it Mia?
For information?
For public education.
Yeah, I mean, if something's sent to Mia, she will put it on the website.
But content
She's not
creation,
going to create the content.
Right.
for it. I think that's perfect.
Right.
Thing
Right.
for this committee to do, create clear content that's easily understandable.
It's to make sure that the technical information is
Right.
accurate. We also have access to Ed Eichner to verify that the technical information is accurate.
I think, though, you know, the content, I think, I agree. You're the best ones to do the content, and you can sort of wrestle with the complexity or simplicity of what that information to the public would be. But the distribution channels, I think, is where the other piece of it is that Mia would be.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We're advisory. We provide support to the town as you request. So I'm just offering that from us. Did somebody
And
over
Alex,
here?
I don't know how
Yeah.
much of this should be actually Board of Health.
Yeah. Well, we're offering to assist them if they need us. That's all.
Because
that was-
you're
I'm
responsible for
sorry,
putting
go
up the
ahead.
signs, right?
Yes, the health department is responsible for the communication aspect and issuing the advisory in a situation like Pilgrim Lake, or at Skakit, when we had to close the beach to
Right.
swimming. That's where the health department steps
Right,
in.
we don't make those decisions, and we don't go to them and say, yeah, you better, no.
We can help with the
No, we follow-
communication.
the Board of Health follows state
He's
protocol.
Yeah, well, just a brief point. I mean, I thought that's kind of what the committee is here for, is to help with communications and, maybe add to or provide some science background along with Ed. But just, looking at communications, as Valerie mentioned, posting more detailed signs, but things you can do with communication these days, with posting an HR code to reference, provide background information. I mean, everyone looks at those these days, and they're pretty common. So something like that is something we could help develop for the content. And make it simple, very easy for anyone to access, if you're not on the town notifications or whatever, you see that HR code, and you're going to get, valuable information from it.
Thank you, Bob. Mary, did you have a comment or question?
Just a question. I think we definitely could work to create some public information pieces on cyanobacteria and recognizing the signs for the public, but it'd be helpful to have some person or persons in town government to sort of run it by. I don't think we want to go out, it'd be good to have someone to give us feedback on it before it sort of becomes public. So if you guys could let us know, is that someone at the Department of Public Health or?
We wouldn't send something out without it being approved by the town, so,
So I think,
That point person
Yeah,
is the Board of Health.
yes, absolutely.
so yeah, I think alerts on closures, absolutely, that needs to stay with the
Right.
Board of Health. That needs to be a single point that understands. In terms of the education, that's a good point, Mary. I don't even know. I know we've been encouraged to develop our webpage, as all committees have. But I wasn't even aware that there was a process whereby some person in town government needed to approve what the committee puts up on the website. I just assumed that whatever the committee felt was appropriate, and, I mean, that may well be a false assumption, I don't know, but George, or Meth, is there somebody that needs to say it's okay for your committee to put this up on your town's page?
There is currently no mechanism for deciding what gets up on the web and what doesn't. So if your committee wants to post on your committee page, you can do so.
Okay.
In fact, that is something that we need to follow up on in the next several months, because there should be some gate or filter, but there is not anything present.
Okay, I don't think we're going to go wild and crazy here, but when Mary mentioned it, it was like, oh, I didn't know that there was any kind of thing in place that said, somebody has to give their okay. I thought
And
if we came up with it, we could post it.
But it's,
We won't.
there might be things that could be posted by someone or some entity that would be inappropriate. So that's one small case, but it's more, I think, the education would have more effect if we had a partnership with the town to help disseminate it appropriately.
And I'd say, too, there's two things. There's your page, which you don't get to until you drill down through a couple of layers. And then there's the flagship opening landing page for the town. And that is something that, as I understand it, the content on your page has been pretty much left up to you, and you
Okay.
just get it posted. But having a banner that was on the landing page, I think Mia would do that. Probably at this point, it would be Kim that would give an okay to do that.
Everything can't be priority.
Right.
I would assume that Board of Health could do that. I don't know that that a closure would require, I don't know, but that's yet more steps. So, I mean, that could certainly be, once the health department at the state level contacts Board of Health, our health agent, and says, we advise a closure, I think that should be something that she can just put right up there, contact Mia to immediately post a banner on the website as well as an alert to go out without having to go through additional steps within town government. I mean,
Mary?
is Kim going to say no?
No, and it would be, I don't think it would be a very difficult or time-involved process to get that done.
No.
As a matter of fact, Mia would probably just walk across the hall and
Do it.
get it done, yeah.
Right.
Mary?
But I would say one thing, too, is that all the work that's been done or will be done on public education and communication is totally focused on residents and Orleans people, not, there isn't really a good town outreach for the tourists. So I think the Chamber of
Chamber of
Commerce
Commerce.
needs to be sort of brought into this.
Well, this will definitely be a topic on a future meeting.
Yeah.
And to get more details, I would love to
Sticker off.
have Board of Health give us a list
So,
of things where they think they could, where we
Yeah,
could
and-
be helpful, and
I'm sorry.
This is more related to the topic of education efforts on water quality, relating to water quality issues than cyanobacteria, but, there's other things that we've all been working on, like educating people to reduce fertilizers, educating people to reduce their pesticide use. It would be great for our committee and other nonprofits like OPC to have someone within the town to work to kind of, if we create materials just on the education front about what would be most helpful to preserve our water quality, how do we distribute them? It's challenging to do.
yes, so trying to cycle back on something you mentioned, Meph, with, my concern is how do we minimize this from happening again? The education is an important piece, but I also want to focus on what we're going to do moving forward, what the town is going to do moving forward. You mentioned the timing. It is my understanding that there is funding available now to do an alum treatment in Pilgrim Lake. But that's why I invited George here to
Yeah.
explain that. And I thank you, George, for being here.
Yeah, we have funds for an application in One Pond for remediation work. It was funded a couple of years ago and has sat there. So there's, I got just anticipating whether the town wanted to do something. I tried to get some facts. And we're probably talking about a consultant cost to prepare and present a notice of intent to the Conservation Commission of $9,000. And a treatment, you don't know until you get the bids back, but based on what we had at Uncle Harvey's Pond, if you take away the curtain cost, anticipate $35,000 for that. So this $44,000 is an rough cost. We have just above that in an old article for treatment, so we could do that. Let me talk about timing for a minute. Feels like it's only August, right? But if the town hires a consultant to prepare a notice of intent, say 4 weeks to hire a consultant, and the consultant prepares the notice of intent, files it, there's another 4 weeks. The notice of intent process with the Conservation Commission could be 6 weeks if you get a decision at your first meeting. Could be a couple more weeks if additional changes are required. So that's 6 to 10 weeks plus an appeal period of 3 weeks. And then we have to solicit a vendor to actually do a treatment in the water if the town chose to go in that direction. So that takes a little bit of time for the bidding process, and then there's the actual application, which if you put all those things together, you get to April 1st, and the fish start swimming up the creek, up the herring run around the middle of March. So I've looked at this and thought, maybe we could cut a couple of corners and try to do a couple of things concurrently with a little bit of risk. You put out a solicitation before your appeal period is up on your permit. Well, there's a little risk, but probably not too much. So it is likely, if action were taken almost immediately to
Very
go
quickly,
forward,
yes.
that you could probably get an application ready to go end of February, early March, or maybe March 1st. So you're getting close to that window of acceptability, but believe it or not, but that's the way it would have to go.
Just a second, Judith. I have a quick question for Ed Eichner. When can alum treatments be done? what time of year can they be done?
Well, alum treatments typically, they can be done any time of the year, but typically you want to be doing them when all of the phosphorus that might be in the water column is still in the sediments. So that means before things sort of warm up. So if you got to March, that would be actually an optimal time. Another optimal window is typically around, late October, early November. So the difficulty is going to be that time of year restrictions for the herring.
Right, and
And
are you familiar with any instances where an emergency one was done and it was moved faster through the process, or?
typically, no. I'm not aware of any sort of so-called emergency that has ever been done.
Okay. Okay. All right, Judith.
Yes, so I'm not proposing that this not go forward now, and I suspect and would certainly want Ed to weigh in on what his thoughts are in terms of this probably persisting or returning quickly. That said, we've got two different ponds that responded very differently. Sarah's Pond had a huge cyano bloom back in 2003 or 5. Never happened again for another 10, 13 years. And then it was constant. I mean, you just couldn't stop it. It was so frequent. Harvey's, I think the first cyano bloom we saw was around 2017, 18, and it consistently bloomed every summer thereafter. So it's not, having had one cyano bloom, it's not a given that Pilgrim's going to bloom again, but I think it is probable. And Ed, would you, I'm guessing you'd weigh in on probable?
Well, again, those questions I asked in the beginning.
I mean, in large part, it comes down to whether you have the conditions that create the bloom. You have all of sort of the ancillary conditions that are in favor of a bloom. The question is, do you get to periods of quiescent, little or no wind? Do you have warm enough temperatures? Certainly, you have created a circumstance where there's a lot of available phosphorus now. Stuff that used to be bound is now, it's probably going to take a while to bind back up. But, that's where you sort of are. I mean, one of the things that you're sort of right on is once you get a bloom, you have crossed a threshold. You have created a situation where you have documented that you can get to the conditions that you can have a bloom. So you could have another bloom again if you get to the right conditions again.
And I think, in fact, it's quite common to have more cyano blooms in October, November, which sort of surprised me, but that's when the ponds flip. When the bottom waters go to the top goes to the bottom, the higher nutrients are suddenly now released to where there's sunshine, and that typically you almost see more cyano blooms, even though it's less attention because people aren't swimming at that point in time. But
Froze, I think.
The worst ones are typically in August. Those are the ones that are going to get, because you've got warm temperatures. If you're getting into October and November, the temperatures have cooled down, and cyano like warm temperatures.
warmer and warmer and warmer all the time, yeah.
Thank you, Ed. Valerie, you have another?
So I hear a sense of urgency, and we've had these gentlemen sort of lay out for us what has to happen when, if we're going to agree to an alum treatment in a timely fashion.
We don't. We can only recommend.
So does that, so our action here on this, should we be voting on this with the intention of telling them to please move ahead as quickly as they can? And, work with George's sort of cutting corners manner to get us to where we need to be?
Yeah, I don't know how fast Conscom could go through that process either, but, our committee did make that recommendation for Pilgrim Lake for a interim alum treatment, which would buy the town time till sewering was completed. We've made that in the past.
February, we voted in February.
Yes, February. The Select Board made a decision not to act on that recommendation at the time, so would the committee feel it's appropriate to recommend to the Select Board that they revisit their decision made earlier?
And perhaps we could get some feedback from the select board as to whether or not that would be effective?
Well, I think it's something that our committee
Under we asked Meth, is this going to be on the select board agenda on Wednesday?
So-
We don't meet Wednesday. We meet. We're not meeting again until a week from Wednesday.
Okay,
But I think, I was just talking with George, I think having this on the agenda would be, I think that's likely to be happening. He needs to talk to Kim and probably Michael Herman, but I think there's no reason why it couldn't be on our agenda, and it should be.
okay,
Thank you.
great.
Good.
But that would be a question of the select board voting to use or to release the monies that George already has. It wouldn't be a town meeting warrant article
Correct.
thing, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So-
So just before you all jump in, again, I would like to know if the committee would like to make that recommendation that the Select Board revisit this. But Judith?
So I'd just like some additional discussion with
Sure,
the
sure.
opportunity to get some information from Ed as long as he's here. But I was just going to say from previously, the concern about notifying and letting people know, tourists versus abutters. Honestly, the bigger concern that we saw on this last one was abutters, because tourists only have access to the beaches through the public beaches. So when there's a sign there, they know immediately. Those who live on the pond don't go to the public beach. So there they are with no way of knowing that the beach has been closed. So that's one of the things that I know OPC is going to be working on, again,
There's a
with Board of
beach-
Health to
there's
do.
a Association Beach on Pilgrim, too. So
There
yeah.
isn't, but there's actually two. There's one on each side. I did meet with a very large group of the Pilgrim abutters right shortly after that first weekend. And, I mean, the big question, of course, is what can we do, what can we do? And I really think that this is an opportunity when we have to talk about, everyone is now jumping to the alum, and that's very important. However, what we can do, stop using fertilizers and pesticides immediately, if you haven't already. I mean, this is huge. We don't talk about it because it's that sort of softer, bigger plan, but come on, guys, here you are, you're creating this problem in your pond. You've got to stop, you've got to fix it. The second thing is those who have paths and walkways down to the water. Again, you've got a lot of rain these last several weeks. When that rain goes rushing down that pathway into the water, it's taking sediments that are loaded with phosphorus, and it's taking all kinds of nutrients off lawns, and it's shooting them right down into the water. So that's another thing. Put in some water bars to redirect it over into the woods. And the final thing that I'll just say that I wanted to have more discussions on is time of year. Conservation Commission typically will have a December to February for this kind of work. In the ACEC on a pond. So we can certainly have more discussions around that, but that's going to be something going into the hearing that's going to be considered. And one area of discussion that I'd like to hear more from Ed on, the Conservation Commission will be doing a beach restoration at Pilgrim in December. And that is expanding the area of beach by removing weeds. That's been something that's of concern to me and was discussed greatly at the whole permitting process because, of course, when you rake up those weeds, you're also pulling up some sediments. By doing that, you are releasing more nutrients into the water column. Grave concern that will that in turn further degrade and impair the pond? It might. And the commission was very cognizant of that when we had that discussion. But this is that age-old, not conflict, but struggle between recreational access and protection And protection says you stay away. Recreational access says you do what's necessary to allow the public to actually use these resources that we have. So that's a balancing act. And now, how does that coordinate with or in any way impede an alum treatment? And what's the best practice? Is the best practice in this case that an alum treatment follow? And if so, by how many weeks? Or is it something where you want the alum treatment to go first with the beach restoration later? The alum is not going to be applied where the beach is. I mean, that's not where you do an alum treatment. But there might still, I think, be some interaction between the two, and while we've got access to Ed, I would love to pick his brain on that. So, sorry, but I'm not ready to go with the go
That's why
forward. I'm
he's
ready
here.
to
That's
get
why
additional
he's here.
information.
Pick away.
I just wanted to comment.
Yeah, sorry, Alex.
No, that's okay. Just a comment. The mechanism for notifying anyone in town, and especially abutters who live on a pond that's being affected by a bloom, is in place. That would be the, the Civic Ready that the IT department did do a big push for. They encouraged people to sign up. And if anyone has not signed up yet, I would, first order of business, that's how the town can very easily communicate with people, and it's immediate. We sent out the Civic Ready, people got a text message about Pilgrim Lake, 5 minutes after it happened.
And that's what I encouraged the people I met with to do, to get on the town's
Right.
alert system, and OPC's as well. And
We
OPC
do-
asked them too.
There is a bit of a barrier, not everyone, that requires a smartphone, it requires some, ability to use technology and all those things, but that is in place, it's being used. And so if anybody, if OPC or any other organization who's involved with this is communicating with the abutters, that is the way that the health department is going to get the message out immediately.
Right.
So,
That's what we told people, sign up for those alerts.
Great.
So, yeah.
So you had a question for Mr. Eichner?
Yeah, so the order will, again, I know that disrupting bottom sediments is going to have a negative impact, and the reason we put a time of year on that of December